There is a pattern that almost no one talks about, because it doesn't fit the story we tell about money and success. It goes like this. Someone works for years to reach a financial milestone. They get there. And then quietly, almost without noticing, they find a way to lose it. Not through catastrophe, through 1,000 small decisions that seem unrelated, until you step back and see the shape they make. Or it goes like this. Someone earns more than they ever have. Objectively, more. And yet, the anxiety doesn't leave. The scarcity feeling doesn't leave. No matter how much arrives, it never quite feels like enough, or like theirs. Or this. Someone is on the edge of a real breakthrough. A client who would change everything. A deal that would change everything. A conversation that would change everything. And they hesitate. They delay. They find a reason it isn't the right time. And the moment passes. These are not 3 different problems. They are 3 expressions of the same one. And it has a name. The self-worth ceiling is the unconscious upper limit on what you believe you are allowed to have. Not what you want. What you believe, on a cellular level, is actually yours to keep. The word allowed is important here. Because this isn't about capability. Most people who hit this ceiling are capable of far more than they currently hold. It isn't about intelligence or work ethic or talent. It is about permission. An invisible, internal permission structure that was built long before adulthood. And that has been quietly governing every financial decision since. The psychologist Gay Hendricks, who spent decades studying this pattern, called it the upper limit problem. His observation was simple and devastating. Most people have a deeply conditioned tolerance for how much good they are allowed to experience at one time. And when life pushes them past that tolerance, when things get too good, too abundant, too successful, the nervous system treats it as a threat and finds a way to bring things back down to the familiar level. Not consciously. The conscious mind wants success. It is working toward it, dreaming about it, planning for it. But underneath, the subconscious is running a different calculation entirely. One based not on what is possible, but on what feels safe. And safe, for the subconscious, means familiar. It means consistent with the identity you have held. It means congruent with the story about who you are and what people like you get to have. So when abundance arrives, and it exceeds what that story allows, the system self-corrects. It sabotages. Not because you are broken, because you are doing exactly what you were programmed to do. Staying consistent with a version of yourself that was written for you before you had any say in it. Day 1 of this series was about understanding identity as the operating system. Day 7 is about understanding what happens when that operating system encounters input it wasn't built to hold. To change the ceiling, you have to understand how it was constructed. Because it wasn't arbitrary. It was built with extraordinary precision, piece by piece, from the specific environment you grew up in. Some ceilings are built from scarcity. Growing up in a household where money was genuinely tight, where the conversation around finances carried fear or shame or exhaustion, teaches the nervous system that money is inherently precarious. That comfort is temporary, that the other shoe is always about to drop. And so even when circumstances change entirely, the body remains on alert. It cannot relax into abundance because it was never shown that abundance could last. Some ceilings are built from something subtler: belonging. Humans are tribal animals. The need to belong to our group, our family, our community, our class, is one of the most powerful drives we have. And success, financial success in particular, can feel like a threat to that belonging. If everyone around you struggled, then thriving can feel like a betrayal. Like moving away from the people you love most. The ceiling in this case is not built from a fear of failure. It is built from a fear of separation, of becoming someone your people no longer recognize. This is one of the most painful and least discussed dynamics in personal finance, because the person experiencing it often has no conscious awareness of the conflict. They just know that every time things start going well, something pulls them back. They feel guilty. They feel exposed. They feel, somehow, like they are doing something wrong, even when everything they are doing is right. And some ceilings are built from a third source: early experiences of visibility and consequence. Children who were punished or shamed for standing out. Families where success attracted criticism, jealousy, or unwanted attention. Environments where making yourself small was a form of protection. For people who grew up in those environments, financial success carries an old, wordless warning. Don't get too big. Don't draw attention. Stay where it is safe. These are the roots. And until they are seen clearly, they continue to shape everything above ground. The self-worth ceiling is difficult to see from the inside because it doesn't announce itself as sabotage. It disguises itself as reason, as practicality, as humility, as timing. The thoughts it generates sound like wisdom. This isn't the right moment. I'm not quite ready. I should wait until I have more experience, more certainty, more proof that I deserve this. These thoughts feel true. They feel like careful, responsible thinking. But the test is simple. Do they only appear when something good is about to happen? If the hesitation, the delay, the sudden surge of self-doubt arrives precisely at the threshold of expansion, that is the ceiling making itself known. There are patterns worth watching for. The first is the windfalls and drains cycle. Money arrives, a bonus, a gift, an unexpectedly good month. And within a short time, it is gone. Not through deliberate spending, but through a series of individually justifiable decisions that together add up to one thing. The level has been reset. This is the ceiling functioning as a thermostat. It brought the temperature back down. The second pattern is chronic underpricing. You know your work is worth more. You might even tell other people it is worth more. But when it comes to asking for it yourself, something stops you. A rationalization appears. The market isn't ready. The client can't afford it. It will be different next time. Next time arrives, and the same thing happens. This is not a pricing problem. It is a worth problem. The third pattern is the almost. The business that gets to a certain size and then quietly plateaus. The savings account that reaches a number, always roughly the same number, and then finds a reason to be drawn down. The ceiling in these cases is not a wall. It is a fog. It doesn't block clearly. It simply makes everything past a certain point harder to see, harder to reach, harder to hold. Recognizing your pattern is not comfortable. But it is the beginning of everything. Because you cannot dismantle a ceiling you cannot locate. The self-worth ceiling does not come down in a single session of journaling, or a single moment of realization, or a single powerful conversation. It was built over years. It comes down over time, through a process that is unglamorous and requires more patience than most people expect. But there is a place to begin, and it starts with this understanding. The ceiling is held in place by a story, and the story is held in place by evidence. Specifically, by the absence of contradictory evidence. Your subconscious believes the ceiling is real because it has never accumulated enough lived proof that the story is wrong. So the first move is not to argue with the ceiling. It is to stop reinforcing it. Every time you undercharge and tell yourself it's practical, you reinforce it. Every time you deflect a compliment about your work, you reinforce it. Every time you minimize an achievement, catastrophize a windfall, or decline an opportunity because you are not quite ready, you reinforce it. These are small acts. Individually, they feel insignificant. Cumulatively, they are the mortar that holds the ceiling in place. Begin instead to practice what might be called worth tolerance. The deliberate, repeated act of allowing good things to be real without immediately finding a reason to diminish them. When money arrives, let it land. Pause before moving it. Notice the impulse to spend it, give it away, or find an urgent expense. And sit with that impulse rather than immediately acting on it. This is not about being precious with money. It is about building a new nervous system response. One in which abundance is familiar, rather than alarming. The second move is to update the belonging story. If your ceiling was built from a fear of separation, then this needs to be examined directly. Because the premise is false. Growth does not require abandonment. Becoming more does not mean the people you love become less. Write this down. Somewhere you will see it. My expansion does not diminish anyone else. There is not a fixed amount of prosperity that must be divided among the people I love. My becoming more does not make them less. This is not a feel-good affirmation. It is a correction of a factual error that has been costing you, quietly, for years. Today's exercise has 2 parts. Return to the notebook you started on day 1. For the first part, write this at the top of a new page. Where does my money always stop? Think about the recurring number in your savings, the income level you keep returning to, the threshold at which growth seems to stall. Write it down without analysis first. Then underneath, write, what would have to be true about me for this to keep happening? Let that question sit for 10 minutes. Write whatever comes. For the second part, identify one specific action you have been deferring, one thing you have been not quite ready for, and take the smallest possible version of it today. Not the full action, the smallest version. Send the email. Name the number out loud, even to yourself alone. Make the call. The point is not the outcome. The point is the act of crossing the threshold, even fractionally. Because every time you do, you are showing your subconscious a new piece of evidence. It is safe to go further than before. Your declaration for day 7. Say it aloud. I am allowed to have more than I have been given permission to hold. My worth is not a ceiling, it is a foundation. And foundations can always be built deeper. I choose today to let good things be real. That is day 7. You are now 1/3 of the way through this process. And if you have been doing the exercises, you already know that something is shifting. It may not look dramatic from the outside, but the roots are changing. Day 14 arrives next Monday. It goes to the place where identity and action finally meet. The moment where the internal work begins to materialize as external results. Do the exercise. Say the declaration. And in the comments, write what you discovered when you asked yourself where your money always stops. That naming is part of the work.